sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are live, and we're back at it on a Thursday night with a special guest here with you. You don't want to miss it. We got a lot to unpack. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your evening. Jay Stepp is joining us and back with you. I am pumped and excited because college football talk, NHL Stanley Cup playoff, man, was game one a classic last night. And the NBA Finals, OKC and Indiana. We got a lot to talk about here tonight, Chase. But I got to tell you, though, I did watch the new Lilo and Stitch movie. And I got to say, as cute as it was and very family friendly, I kind of wish they would have fixed up a bunch of stuff. But then again, it was still a great movie. I loved it.
Yeah, it was. And you know, people sitting there saying that it was, you know, the worst one that they ever made. And, you know, they said that it doesn't deserve to be on screen. I'm like, you guys don't have an open mind to anything. Like, I thought it was a really good movie. And in terms of live action, I'd put it in the top 5 live actions that Disney has done. Because, you know, not only did they bring in, like, they switched a few things up, and they brought in a, you know, side of, you know, that still hits you in the feels, you know, a side that you still get emotionally attached, but it's a happy ending at the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I liked it. I thought it was good. I went in there with an open mind. There was still a few things that, like, I agree they could have, you know, done better.
Yeah.
But, you know, they did a very good job casting in terms of who they played or had to play Lilo. They got the original voice actor for Stitch. And would I go watch it again? Absolutely, I would.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, I wouldn't mind it at all. Well, before we bring in our special guest, so it is official that Aaron Rodgers has finally came out after 3 months of the free agency market, and now he's going to be in Pittsburgh. He will officially quarterback the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well. Wouldn't you just love it? Look, it doesn't change how I feel about the Pittsburgh Steelers, truthfully. It really doesn't. But I will say this, that Pittsburgh needed a quarterback. Chase and I have been on this topic now for the last couple of weeks. And the thing about it is that as much as I love Pittsburgh's defense, I got to get consistency up on offense. You're not going to get that if you're mediocre up at quarterback at best. And that's why you had to go and get a pro. And Aaron Rodgers, look, whether he fits the bill or he doesn't, you got one. And you know that you're facing Lamar Jackson twice a year. You're facing Joe Burrow twice a year. And you're facing Myles Garrett in that Cleveland Browns defense twice a year. So you cannot be mediocre up at quarterback for the second time again. And this is why now the Pittsburgh Steelers have a lot they need to prove this up-and-coming season. So once you got Aaron Rodgers, you got somebody who's capable of throwing you the football, and now that you've got newly acquired DK Metcalf, you've already shipped off George Pickens, you've also lost Najee Harris, so there's a lot of things that they've got to prove on. Run game, offense, if they're capable of scoring 25-plus points a game, that's what they got to do. But again, as much as I respect Mike Tomlin, he's not as creative up on offense, but that's why Arthur Smith has to be better than this up-and-coming season. And we know Aaron. I mean, I watched the documentaries. I watched Enigma. I know what Aaron Rodgers is because he's welcomed all of us into his life. I mean, this is just who he is. He's unapologetically him. And, as much as passive aggressive that he can be, I mean, he's going to speak it the way it is. And so hopefully everyone is on the same page up in Pittsburgh. Again, I don't wish no ill will. I think this team will probably finish over 500, maybe about a game over, like 9-8, or luckily 10-7. But it's going to be kind of a bumpy road, okay? And look, I drive a durable truck that I hope that the tread on the wheels are good enough for me to go through any kind of, rough terrain while we're up and on this journey. But this is where the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're known for this, they're a very proud organization. They've got to get strapped in, ready for the ride. It's going to be a little bumpy, but hopefully there's going to be consistency in the end. So, again, I'm happy for the Steelers. I'm happy for Aaron Rodgers. But cross your fingers, this will work for them. So talking about the college football season, because I'm excited about it. I mean, new adjustments to the 12-team playoff. We no longer have to worry about the conference bid of whether or not they're the top 4 teams. You're going to get the top 4 best teams. And so to explain that, we have former collegiate linebacker from Pittsburgh and Northwestern to discuss more about that. Joining us, Wendell Davis Jr. here on the show. Yes, sir. We hear you loud and proud. So I will tell you this, Wendell. This is I'm excited for this college football season, and I love college football. It's more tribal than anything else. It gets you brought into a lot of these programs. So, when they made the adjustment, and I've been harping on this since they experimented this last year with the 12-team playoff, I thought it was entertaining. I mean, Ohio State, big program, they win the Natty, and you got some Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas. And now, because of without the conference bid mattering as the top 4 teams, we're going to get the best top 4, and then the 5 through 12, they're going to work up and down the ladder from here to see who is truthfully worthy of being up and in the big dance. What did you think about that, and what your thoughts are for the up-and-coming college football season?
Well, first of all, I was very excited for the 12-man playoff. I think it's way better than 4. We get a mixed match of matchups. I mean, we've seen teams that's never gotten the opportunity before, like Indiana, Arizona State, these SMU, even Boise State. These are teams that in the 4-man playoff would have probably never made it, no matter how great their season was. So that's what I did appreciate it. I would say I thought it was kind of unfair. I feel like, at least this is my personal opinion, I feel like the 4 conference champions for Power 4 should win. I think I like the old-fashioned way where it was the SEC champion, the Big Ten champion, the ACC, and the Big 12, and then you put your best group of 5 team, right? So if Boise is the best group of 5, you pick them. If the Sun Belt team is the best group of 5, you pick them. Then the best teams, only because of what happened to Florida State a couple of years. Now, I know the quarterback got hurt, Jordan Travis, and obviously they probably wouldn't have competed, but you take a team who went undefeated, did the criteria. And the biggest thing that I hate sometimes about the college football playoff and the strength of schedule thing is that, we can't determine how good a team is going to be throughout the whole year, right? So when they played LSU in Orlando, that was a top 25 matchup and a top 25 win. Now, we can't control the fact that LSU went on to be, 7-5 or whatever the record was that season. They can't control that. So that's why I feel like, in my personal opinion, I would love to see the 4 Power 4 teams at least, and then the rest of them at large, only because I have a feeling it's going to turn into the SEC Invitational, where teams, we've seen Lane Kiffin complain. We've seen other coaches complain about why they didn't make it, even though, Lane Kiffin dropped two in-conference games, Florida and I believe Kentucky, 2 teams that I think Ole Miss were way more talented than. Georgia, you lose to Vanderbilt. Oh no, that's Alabama. You lose to Vanderbilt. That's what did them in right there. So that's my only fear. It's not that I don't think that the best 12 can work. I just have a fear, because the SEC, and we still have this mindset that the SEC from top to bottom is strong, which it is probably the second best conference behind the Big Ten. I agree with that. But I just think, the whole purpose of the 12-team playoff was to give those Arizona States a chance, those Indianas who went 10-1 a chance. That's my personal opinion, though.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm actually happy you brought this up because, you look at what it gave us last year with Arizona State, and I've got a fellow player who played in the conference, who played in the college football playoff, and I would love to have him up on the show at some point soon to ask what that experience was like. But you got a chance to see Arizona State, and I think they're doing some great things there. Boise State, I never want to count them out because they've been a program that's, they've had a
for
track
long
record.
time, man.
Very strong.
I mean, those guys beat Power 5 teams all the time.
Exactly. And so I start thinking about this and talking about, the teams that were outside looking in, your South Carolinas, your Ole Misses, and a lot of them that were just short but couldn't quite get their invitation. I call this kind of like the invitation to the Met Gala. I mean, you get your drink ticket, you get a glass of wine, and you're dining with the best of the best. So I felt like these teams that were outside looking in, they had a chance. I love South Carolina's defense.
No, I do too, man. My personal opinion, South Carolina is my favorite to win the SEC and have a playoff shot this year. That's like I love South Carolina. I love Shane Beamer, and I love the quarterback Lenore Sellers. That dude's a ball player, man.
Yeah, Lenore Sellers. I've got some very good positive hopes up on him. But I'm thinking about this because I was saying, what the teams we got in the playoff. And you can agree to disagree, but I feel like half, if not 7 teams may end up changing in this college football playoff. There could be half of those because there could be some that might be kind of going through a bumpy road after just getting into the dance this past season. And some, like I would say, i.e. Alabama and a couple others that just missed it because it's a new coaching regime. It's a new playbook. It's a new style. So how do you kind of look at this now? Because I think there's going to be half, if not 7 new teams that might come into the playoff, and the same teams like Ohio State, maybe even Notre Dame or some of them that might return back into the playoff. What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with you. I can definitely see. I don't see Ohio State slowing down anytime soon. I would be surprised if they don't get a berth. I actually think some of the more comments. Before I say that, Ohio State, Clemson. I think Clemson has a chance to really go out there. The ACC is very winnable. I mean, besides my alma mater, Pitt, and maybe a Syracuse who won 10 games last year, I don't see where they really have any problems as far as playing the ACC schedule. As far as the other teams, Texas. I mean, the SEC is just tough, man. I mean, Texas opens up at Ohio State, I think, right? So, that's going to be a big game right there. I just think for teams like Indiana, I've seen their schedule release. I think they miss it if they don't beat the teams that are playing convincingly because their schedule isn't very strong. I mean, even their in-conference schedule isn't strong. So I would say they'll have to be at least 1 or 2 top 15, 20-ish teams, and then the rest of the teams like Old Dominion and those other FCS teams or a group of 5 teams are playing. They have to win those games by 30 or 40. Convince us that you are the best team because that was a big issue last year, right? Was a strength schedule. Indiana didn't play anybody. Then when they went out there to Notre Dame, obviously it wasn't really even close, to be honest. I mean, the score looked better than what it was. If you watch the game, it wasn't much of a game. But you're right, though. I definitely see a lot of teams, especially with the portal, coaching changes. This is the biggest thing with the portal, right? Every year, things can change. College football is so even. And I say the same thing. It's like college basketball nowadays, right? Like March Madness, anyone can win because you may have a guy in college football who played at Georgia for, his first 2 years. He goes to, Tulane. Now, Tulane has a roster full of Ohio State, USC, Georgia caliber players because of the portal, and now they're the biggest, hot, smokest team in the group of 5. So it's definitely interesting, man, with the portal and coaching changes. But I expect probably to see a South Carolina in there. If Ole Miss can lose no more than 3 games, I don't see why they don't make it. So I definitely think we'll see probably 1 or 2 more SEC teams in this playoff for sure.
I agree. And, speaking of the transfer portal, because I know it was fresh and brand new, and you got a chance to experience that firsthand, when you got players that transferred in. I want your thoughts up on this because whenever you get a player that comes through in the transfer portal, right, it's a team chemistry type of thing. You come in, you get a chance to meet the coaches, you get a chance to meet the players, and then break down film in the playbook. What's that experience like? Because for some, it may work out like they could just automatically come in, they gel, and then for some, it might take a little bit. It might get it might take a little bit for it to gel until it gets right. What was your experience dealing with players that came in, and how did they mesh in with the team's chemistry, the playbook style? Was it kind of smooth, or was there a little bit of a rough transition until it got smooth?
Right. I think for every player is different, right? So I played 4 years at Pitt, and I actually was in the portal myself and went to Northwestern for a grad year. So I'll start from being a player at Pitt, having guys come in. So we always brought in a few grad transfers or guys come in every single year. Obviously, the portal got more popular later on in my college career. It was still kind of the old fashioned way where most guys that were transferring were guys who were already graduated. But I would say it's definitely a learning curve. It's not as easy. It's expensive, one thing. Me going from Pittsburgh to Chicago, closing, ending a lease and for apartments, things. It's not cheap to transfer. So, and the schools aren't covering that. At least when I was there. Now they got NIL collectives and things like that. So it's probably a little bit different, but it's a learning curve. I remember when I was a linebacker, we had a linebacker from Florida, Kylan Johnson, transfer to Pitt. And I know it took him a while. He started for us and played really well for us, but it took him a while to grasp the playbook because, you spend time at a place like a Florida or me at Pittsburgh, and you're there for 4 seasons. So you're learning the system, you're learning the ins and outs, the playbook, and then you have to go somewhere else and learn a complex playbook. And depending on when you come, right? I came in spring ball, so I had about 4 or 5 months to learn that playbook, which it takes some guys 2-3 years to master it. And then, other guys that come in the summer, you have 2 or 3 months to learn a whole playbook and be season ready. So it's a team effort, right? Like I was a Mike linebacker, so when we had outside backers come in, I was always, on the field. I make sure I knew everything. And if you're out there, you need help, ask me. I'll tell you what to do. I'll tell you where to go with the coverage, what we're doing. I think the biggest thing is having reliable teammates who can help you not only off the field, but on the field, because it's one thing to be in the classroom and learn everything. It's another thing to go out there and run at full speed. And you definitely need it's a full team collaboration from the coaches, yourself, and your teammates.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's a lot of work for the coaches because they got to deal with a lot.
Right.
You get the money collective bargaining where now you're in the transfer portal. You then try because I believe in this. I believe that the players choose you in college because you got a culture, a chemistry.
Right.
I live here in Denver, Colorado, so of course when Deion came here, he had to pitch that to a lot of these kids. I'm building a new culture. I'm here about building and developing young men to be better players and, be better people in the future. And then in the NFL, the teams then choose the player because ultimately it's somebody who fits the scheme fit and what they're missing. So I got to say it's probably a lot for coaches because thinking about transfer portal kids and then you got to go out and pitch the recruitment. It's a lot, isn't it?
Right, yeah, their job. They're trying to get ready for the season. They're hitting recruiting trails, transfer portal trails. There's a lot going on, and they have to teach you the stuff. That's why I think the biggest thing is your teammates. Like when I was at Northwestern, I had a fellow linebacker, pretty much the whole group. They always brought me in. They taught me different stuff because, I was at Pittsburgh where I had mastered that playbook for 4 years, and now I'm learning a whole new language, whole new terminology. And the thing with football is, right, everywhere you go, it's the same. You're going to play – most teams are playing a base, a G front, base cover, a base front, and you're playing cover 4, cover 2, whatever your base coverage in the background. The hardest part about a playbook, especially in colleges, terminology. Every team has their own way, their own language, right? This may mean this in this playbook, but over here, this means that. That's the hardest part. It's not learning football. Football is really easy, right? You have cover 1, just man, cover 2, cover 3, cover 4. Every team runs those coverages. You have blitzes, right? Cross dog, middle blitz, off the edge, corner blitz. They all run the stuff. The hardest thing is learning their terminology and learning how to execute in their system because every team is different, right? Every team has their own language, has their own philosophy, and that's really the hardest part, especially when you've been trained for so many years to learn one thing. So, obviously, it's like muscle memory. Your body gets used to that.
And, I meant to ask this, and I don't know if it's a drastic change, but it may be just from the style of play between conferences. I watch the SEC, and I see a lot of some powerhouse offenses that are developed, whether they are all about the ground and pound trench or they're more about the aerial game to where you got a lot of talented receivers, right? You had the benefit of playing for both the ACC and the Big Ten. What was kind of the difference between style of play? Because I watched the Big Ten, and they're physical, they're in the trenches, and they're trying to battle for every single yard.
I would say both conferences. I would say every team because I played ACC. I played in the ACC, obviously played in the Big Ten. Then I played against in college, Big Ten schools. When I was at Pitt, we played Tennessee. We played FCS schools. We played. So I would say all across the board, every league is physical, right? Obviously, certain leagues have more physical teams. Like, in Big Ten, you have Iowa, Michigan, because they run more old school Wisconsin, down the pound, north and south offense. But the ACC, I would say, you have to be an athlete. It's spread. The game is more spread out. More teams run no huddle spread. There's more. I mean, it's a great league for receivers and corners. So you have to be able to play in space, run and tackle, things like that. The Big Ten is the same thing because it's no different. But the teams you're playing against, like Northwestern, you're in the Big Ten West. Now there's no divisions. It was one big conference. The top two teams played. But back when I played, which is not that long ago, but you had the Big Ten East and you had the Big Ten West. And the Big Ten West was those Wisconsins, those Iowas, those I'm trying to think, Nebraska, teams like that, where the ball, we're lining up. There's a fullback there. You got to take on that block and you got to fill the gap. So really, it's just a different. It's different, but at the same time, it's all the same, I would say. But the biggest difference is the ACC is more spread ball. You got to run and tackle. The Big Ten is more, it's coming downhill, fill the gap, and make a play.
So you had the benefit of playing alongside two of these players. Of course, opposite side from offense and defense, but you got a chance to evaluate. So I want to start with one because I do believe that Minnesota, I think they're going to be just fine with J.J. McCarthy there up at quarterback, but you've also got a star receiver with Justin Jefferson and Pittsburgh himself, Jordan Addison. You know what I mean? How did you evaluate Jordan Addison's game? Because I love what the kid does, and I think, for Minnesota, it was just classic because it seemed like when they drafted these receivers, they didn't hurt in that position because once they got Justin Jefferson, they moved off the other. And then once they moved off of Adam Thielen, oh, hey, here's Jordan Addison, and he comes out and he is a dog in the rookie season. How did you evaluate Jordan Addison on the opposite ends of what he was like?
Right. I would say, Jordan Addison, I think I was 2 or 3 years ahead of him, so he was younger. At least from when I was there, he was a very quiet guy, but one thing, he always ran great routes, very polished receiver, sure-handed. He was very reliable for us. We knew when he was on the field, we had a good chance of winning. We had a really good chance because he was always open. He always in the right spot. Very hard worker. I don't really remember him going out for real. I know he was always spending late nights in the indoor. Just an overall humble kid, hard worker. Came in from day one in 2020 during that COVID season and made an immediate impact. Obviously, in the season after that, he broke out and won the Biletnikoff. But I always say this, man. The Minnesota Vikings right now with Kevin O'Connell is a young player's dream. You have a great offensive system. I mean, if you're a young quarterback like McCarthy, my thing with McCarthy is when he was coming out, I never thought he was a bad player. I was just always kind of because at Michigan he wasn't asked to do a lot, right? I don't think we really saw at least what his skill set is just yet because he was handing the ball off, play action, wide up to the tight end, right? So I don't. But then again, I have to remember I can't discredit him. He was just playing in the system that he was in. So but I think he could thrive, man. Justin Jefferson. I think Jordan Addison was a great pick for Minnesota. I mean, he had a chance to go in there, which he has done already. His first 2 years, had 2 great seasons for a young player. Especially playing outside of Justin, where he can have more favorable coverages and show what he can do. Even when Justin was hurt, he was still playing really well. I know it took him and Sam Darnold a while to build that connection, but once they did, he was rolling, man. And I think honestly, man, I don't know. I'm not too sure of rankings and all that stuff, but he definitely has potential to be a top 25 receiver in this league. I'm not saying that because I play with them. I'm saying that because, I've seen him work every day in college. I saw him play on the field and just watch him in the NFL. The sky's the limit for him.
See, that's what I love to build. Hypothetically, if I built a whole roster, I'd love to have guys that have such a great work ethic. These are guys that are willing to learn, and these are guys that are willing to step up in the moment when they know it's a next man up mentality. And I think he's a great player, and I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. Now, the other one, so my co-host, he's a fellow Cleveland Brown fan, and he's covered, the Cleveland Browns. So, of course, you had the pleasure of playing opposite on the field with Kenny Pickett. And so I got to say, his walk is, I thought it was a great thing when he got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He stayed in state, familiarity. Now, some of the scouters were kind of concerned about the hand size with the grip, the spin, and the touch on the ball. But I felt like Kenny Pickett, he'll give you stuff when you give him the playbook and give him the time in order to master that and make it all work. And now through the journey, he goes to Philadelphia, and he's a crucial piece because he helps out to the Philadelphia Eagles to win a Super Bowl this past season. And now here he is in Cleveland. For at least our radio audiences here, What's kind of a thing we should expect about Kenny Pickett, and especially with the situation he's now going to be in with the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, for one, I'm super excited for him and this opportunity in Cleveland. I know he's kind of have an up and down path as far as popular opinion and what people think about him in the NFL, but I'm glad he has a chance to, to kind of just restart, regroup, and really, show that he can be a big time starter in this league, which I believe he can. And if you look at his college career, right, he was one of the, really hard worker at another guy, always early, dependable leader. You knew when he was on the field, he was giving it his all, right? I never once questioned his effort, his heart. He played through injuries, concussions, all type of stuff. So I never once questioned his toughness. And I think too, obviously, we're so used to the, CJ Stroud-ish type careers, right? Where you come in and you're just rolling Jaden Daniels. Sometimes it may take guys a year or two, right? I mean, if you look at him at Pitt, right, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks in Pitt history. But if you look at his career, it wasn't always just elite ball, right? He had times where he didn't play his best, but he continued to battle. And then look what happened. He had a Heisman candidate season, and he went first round, which was really dope to go to the Steelers, stay home. And I just think, honestly, like you say, he has talent, man. I'm not saying it because I play with him. Well, obviously I am, but I watched him play. I watched him work. He can run. He has he has a pretty good arm. And I think, he's a very smart player. He just needs a chance to really, play, right? I just think, going to Pittsburgh, that's been a team that hasn't had a strong offense in a while, right? With Big Ben, declining. They really never had an emergency plan as far as the next identity, what they're going to be on offense, right? And then you bring in Matt Canada, where I don't think his play calling was always in Kenny's favor. Short crossing, the route combination, I wasn't a big fan of that. And I think that could hurt a young quarterback. Obviously he's, sometimes, maybe he has to play better or whatever you want to say. But, as a young quarterback, you're only as good as your people around you and your coaching and your play calling. I felt that he wasn't always set up for that monumental success in Pittsburgh. But we definitely saw glimpses of that, what he can do. He was very clutch for Pittsburgh. One of the more clutch quarterbacks in the league. I think there's some crazy stat where when his team's been down, he's won the game almost every time. He goes to Philly, backs up Jalen Hurts, gets to learn behind, learning a great system, great coaching staff. And there was one game I watched, the one game he started, he played really well in that game. And I was like, wow, he's got some, he's got it, man. He just needs a chance to where he can lock in, not him lock in, but a team that really just gives him a chance, gives him the keys and go play ball, man. And that's why I really thought after that happened, he would have went to New Orleans, but he goes to Cleveland. So I think with Cleveland, me personally, I think he's going to end up being the starter starting the season off, right? Unless he goes to camp and just doesn't do anything or gets hurt, I don't see why he doesn't start. I know Joe Flacco has success, but Joe Flacco's 40-something years old. I don't believe myself that Joe Flacco is a full-time, consistent 17-game starter. I don't believe it. I think with Kenny Pickett, you have a guy who's a first-round pick. He has a great offensive system with Stefanski there now. And I just think, he's more mobile. You can do more with him. Kenny can run. He can make plays. He can improvise. He gives you an advantage that Flacco doesn't give you. And then with the other two guys, Gabriel and Shador, obviously, unless they come out there and just blow it out the water, I don't see those guys starting right away. So I think, honestly, it's Kenny's job to lose, and I'm excited to see what he does. I hope to see him go out there. And I really want to see him have success, man. Former teammate, like you mentioned, so I want to see him have success.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited about it, man. It should be an interesting situation for sure. A final question here before letting you go, and this is more of a personal one because you had the pleasure of playing in college as a linebacker and playing there up in football. And I know you probably have mentored a lot of the recruiting classes from high school, and maybe even you get a chance to mentor some of the younger ones beforehand. But if you had a chance, and putting you here on the spot, when you get a youngster that comes in and says, I want to play Pittsburgh football, I want to play Northwestern football, what's the best advices that you would give for these kids to build them on their pathway to achieve successes to maybe potentially have a career in the NFL in the future?
Right. So I'll say a couple things. I'm going to try to condense it so it's not super long. Number one, I would say you have to be disciplined, right? Don't come to school don't come to school, waking up late, showing up late to stuff, whether it's a workout, a meeting, a practice, even class, man, that stuff adds up. You don't want to be a list guy. You want to be a guy that's always on time, always dependable. I was in college for 5 years, never late one time. So it can be done. It just requires discipline, you getting up on time. And I wasn't always just going to bed at 8 o'clock. I stayed up till 1 o'clock, partying after a game, but I still was always on time for the next day. that working hard, man. Always give your full effort. The biggest thing they want to see is effort. Like coaches know coming right away, you're not going to be a master of the playbook. You're going to be behind on certain things, skill set wise, and the older guys have 2 or 3 years ahead of you on. But can you go out there? Can you play hard? Can you just show what you can do? And really, number 3, I would say, if I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it, the third biggest thing I would just say is just go out there. Like I said, be dependable, have great effort, and special teams, man. I can't stress you how important special teams. If you're not a quarterback, if you're a running back, receiver, tight end, linebacker, even a DN who's kind of athletic, get on special teams. That will give you playing. If you really care about playing, obviously it's hard for a freshman to come in there and start right away. Most freshmen don't start. A lot of guys come in, they think, it don't start, it's the end of the world. You have 5 years in college to make this dream happen. You don't have to start. You come in there like me. I came into Pittsburgh my freshman year. I was the 5th or 6th linebacker on the depth chart, but I excelled in my role with my group. I was going with the 3s, with the freshman group. I ended up going with the 2s a little bit because Mike got hurt in front of me, so I was rotating back. I didn't really know everything, but I was playing with effort, making plays, and I was excelling at special teams. All year long, I was excelling. By week 8 or something, I think like that, I played in 4 games on kickoff return, punt, punt and punt return on special teams. And some people may underlook that, but look, I'm a freshman, just got out of high school last year. I'm on the bus. I'm on the team playing now. I'm playing. You get a chance to impact your team. So any chance possible, whether it's kickoff return, punting, because most of the older guys, once they get their spot and they get comfortable, they're not going to take that stuff as serious. So that's where you can come in. So can you play those roles? And now you're on the bus and you get to play. And obviously, as year goes on, master your playbook, learn that stuff, and then you'll be on the field.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. Wendell, such a pleasure having you up here on the show. I got a chance to peek at some of your work as well, man, and that's amazing stuff. Being right there up onto the field, you're seeing the pros, you're getting all of the best shots up from there, man.
Oh, thank you, man. My photography stuff, yeah, man. Yeah, I really do appreciate you having me on, man. Like I said, I figured why not, man. I love talking ball. I mean, I'll check some of your stuff out. You have a good thing going on. If you guys want to follow my TikTok page, I make sports content on TikTok and Instagram at WDJ Sports, man. And anytime you want me back on, you know where to hit me up, man. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Love to have you back up on here soon. Appreciate you coming on by, man. Enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend, and we will see you on the flip side.
Yes, sir. Have a good one, man.
You too, man. Thank you. Well, there you go. I mean, hey, this is good stuff. I mean, you get a chance to learn from a lot of, not just from the NFL experiences, but even from the college, perspective. But
yeah,
I know you were there kind of looking a little bit puzzled there with the Kenny Pickett thing with the Cleveland. But again, you get a chance to see on the opposite side of the field. I mean, linebacker, you get a chance to analyze, see what the quarterback's going to do. That's why I thought it was going to be interesting, because I want to know what the situation is in Cleveland.
I don't blame Wendell. I mean, he's a college linebacker. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to football, so I trust him. Mm-hmm. But college is way different than the pros. And ever since Kenny Pickett has gotten into the pros, the only reason he's had success is because he's on the Steelers. I don't think that Kenny has what it takes to be a starter in this league, because the game that he had with the Eagles, he played one game, and in the one game that he played, we all saw the pass where he was dropping back and he was going to go throw it forward, and he drops it out of his hand and then gets hit. I mean, we all know this. Like, I don't want to sit here and argue with a guy that has played football at a higher level than I have, and from a person that just analyzes the sport. But from a person that follows the NFL and follows my team and everything, the coaches like Kenny Pickett and everything, and they think that he could be good. But Shedeur is really, really like making a name for himself and making like it known, like, hey, I'm doing all I can to be the starter. I truly think it will be Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders, QB 1 and 2. I think Kenny Pickett will be either cut by the third preseason game or traded to like New Orleans or, somewhere else where he can try to be a starter and everything. I just don't think he's going to cut it in Cleveland. And he's got more offensive playmakers like David Njoku, Quinshon Judkins. He's got Harold Fannin Jr., Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, like better offensive playmakers. But I just don't think he has what it takes to be a starter. I really don't.
Well, I'll tell you this, though, to be fair. I mean, because give or take the situation, right? I mean, ultimately, the task at hand that we know that happens with a lot of teams that draft rookie quarterbacks, right? They always have a veteran that's up and in front of them where they've gotten the experience, they've gotten the time up on their belt, right? So like I said, always what I give for rookie quarterbacks whenever that they would start is about a 6 to 8 week window, maybe even 9 if you're lucky about that, because it gives them time to master the playbook, gives them time to run those reps up in practice, and then they feel comfortable and they're ready to storm the field. That's why I'm like, if it was either Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett with the veteran experience and then roll with the rookie, then, I would be okay with either of those because I know it's all part of the process and the plan, right? You're trying to find that franchise quarterback. You don't just want to throw them immediately up and in the gate unless you are that number 1 overall pick where you got Caleb Williams, you got Cam Ward. But still, you want to know what you're getting as far as a franchise quarterback is concerned because you want to be patiently cooking this thing up to where he's now ready and confident. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
I mean, it's like they always make that argument like college is way different than the pros. That's why we have seen guys like Kellen Moore, who won 50 games at Boise and
he was a top 3 finalist in Heisman.
Yeah, had the best college record in all of college football, and then turns out to be, one of the biggest fails.
Turns out to be undrafted in the NFL.
Johnny Manziel wins a Heisman Trophy, becomes a first-round pick, one of the top, picks in the draft, and then turns out to be one of the biggest busts and everything. Like, just because your college play warrants you to be good does not mean that you are going to be good in college. And Wendell, that's what I'm saying. Like, Wendell may have seen him play in college and I don't know if it's because he played with Kenny Pickett and that's why he thinks he's going to be good, or if it's because he was different in college than he is in the pros. Like, it just wasn't translating and stuff from what we've seen. I think
it really comes down to the person. It's about, with the work ethic at the end of the day. I mean, I watched him in college in Pittsburgh and I thought, he was productive. I think the one thing that scouters, what they put out was his hand size, the ball, the ball placement and the accuracy, the touch and the spiral, right? Because some guys that usually have a hand reach or especially a stretch, normally you'll see how they grip a football. Sometimes that's always crucial because it's the spiral, the touch and release and the accuracy that comes with it because it's a lot of the work, right? So I think part of it is you analyze even from the other side of the field because you're getting a chance to see what is my quarterback going to do? How is he going to approach this type of defensive set? Is he going to either lose that battle or does he win it by a pass or even on a run? So that's usually what you're going to look at if you're on the defensive side. But again, however this situation up in Cleveland really pans out, I mean, I still hope I'm still on this Shedeur train. I
am too. Yeah. I'm starting to be more and more, especially after watching a lot of the videos of OTAs, that he is. Well, it grew on me once during the draft process and before about a month before the draft and I saw him at before his pro day. So it was kind of when the combine was happening is when I was transitioning into the Shedeur hype train and everything. But watching the videos that he's had at OTAs and everything, and dude has a very clean ball. He keeps his footwork in the pocket, goes through his reads astronomically fast. And then he's only had one mistake, and that mistake was due to the wide receiver not being able to catch the ball.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And again, sometimes, college and pros, totally different. Sometimes you can come out of college and you may not be a winning quarterback in college, but you look at a lot of these quarterbacks that are winning right now in the NFL, something is clicking. And a lot of it is you're finding mechanics. You're finding the language. It's almost like Rosetta Stone. You're learning a new language and it's meshing.
Yep.
Up. So,
and you got guys that come out of smaller schools that are winning. Like Joe Flacco came out of a small school, won a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson
out of Wyoming.
Josh Allen out of Wyoming won an MVP. Lamar Jackson out of Louisville, who doesn't hasn't had much success. Texas, Mahomes with Texas Tech, and now he's a 3-time Super Bowl champion and a 2-time MVP. So you got guys that come out of small schools all the time that have the success. Big Ben out of Miami, you know, and you see it time and time again. So not saying like somebody from Pitt can't have the success. And like I said, I'm no one to scrutinize what Wendell thinks because he's played the game at a high level and everything. But,
they're having a chance of, experiencing, both those conferences.
Yeah. And he's gotten a chance. But, there's a difference between a guy like Jordan Addison because you could tell that the play that he had could transition into the NFL. And, like he said, a Blitnikoff Award winner. And, I think going to USC really propelled his career. Sure. But I do think that if Kenny Pickett went to, an Alabama or a Tennessee or an Ole Miss or a Georgia, would we be saying, would he have been, the number one pick? Would he have been, having the chance of having a Heisman season? Maybe not. I just don't know. But right now I can sit here and say that I can confidently say with about 85% certainty that he's not going to be the Browns starter at the start of the season.
Well, again, it's an interesting situation, so we'll see what will happen from there. We'll take a short break, but we'll be back up on here on the Snake Sports Talk Show.
Biggest QB battle.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
So Wendell Davis Jr., who stopped by earlier, great stuff, great insight with college football around the corner. I am excited for the up-and-coming season. I do think we're going to have some changes with as far as teams that were outside looking in and get some new ones up and coming up and into the season without the conference bid being determining who your top four teams are. So I do want to break down upon this of what I witnessed last night between the Oilers and the Panthers is, and again, a repeat from last year, but I have a feeling that Edmonton, they're on a mission. And mostly it's because if there's anything that we learned from last year from the Stanley Cup final against the Florida Panthers is Connor McDavid winning the Conn Smythe Trophy just told you it was a chip on his shoulder that he's a man on a mission and he is missing the ultimate prize in his trophy case. Edmonton, they started out with a goal to starting off the Stanley Cup final, but as usual, Florida found a way to answer back. And it's a tough series because I do like both these teams, but I do think what Paul Maurice has put together with the Florida Panthers and the sixth straight year that we are seeing a team from the state of Florida representing in the final, whether the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Florida Panthers. I mean, hockey is just on cloud nine here in the state of Florida. But I will tell you, both of them evenly matched. Both of them, I think the coaching side, I give the edge to Paul Maurice, of course, but it's not to say that, Chris Knoblauch couldn't possibly, figure out how to maneuver on some instances. But I do think the Oilers, because they were without Zach Hyman for the rest of the series and also potentially a few games come the start of next season. But I do think there's a part of it that the Edmonton Oilers, they're trying to fight with the hot hand. And a lot of that is Leon Draisaitl. He ended up scoring up 2 goals last night. And, again, Florida is a well-balanced team. They got a very good goaltender. They got a very good offensive unit. And the same when you look at the Oilers. They try to match the speed with the offense. So I thought it was, an instant classic. The thing went on to overtime. And sure enough, Leon Draisaitl was the hero up in overtime. But I think we're going to have ourselves a hell of a series come down the stretch. But we do have the NBA Finals tonight between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. And I'll give you my thoughts on that as well. And with that, we're going to turn to Chase with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
It was fiery last night, man. Again, we know with it being a repeat of the series, I thought Edmonton, they're just on a mission right now. And Connor McDavid really, really badly wants to win that Stanley Cup, but I will not be surprised if it's Florida back-to-back. But I thought that was a classic time.
It could be. It very well could be the Florida Panthers, so we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But if anybody has been living under a rock and you have not heard the news, Jim Irsay, longtime Colts owner of the Indianapolis Colts, passed away last Saturday. And may I say that he has been a, prominent figure in the NFL world, and a lot of people have, been looking towards him, but he has donated a lot of his money to charity. And his daughter, Carly, from what I heard from my friend Derek Larger from the Bring the Juice podcast, he has said that Carly will be the one that will take over for Jim Irsay because she spent the most time around the organization, around the NFL, and she was the one that basically made the moves over the past few seasons, and in terms of hiring, or in terms of whether or not they were going to fire Ballard and things like that. So she's going to take over. All 3 of the daughters are going to have a say, but Carly's the one that's basically making the shots in the organization there.
So it's almost like, when Detroit's upbringing, when the daughter ended up taking over for the team. And I think the best thing that she could do was, she was under fire, when she ended up taking it on, because we all remember the history of the Detroit Lions for as long as we can remember, but she was under fire the minute that she took the grand ownership of the team to try to turn this thing around. That's what hired Brad Holmes. That's what hired, Dan Campbell. And she was trying to turn the league. And the Detroit Lions in the last 2 seasons got much better. I felt like they were much more buttoned up. But let's see what this season looks like for them. But I feel like the Colts, if there's any chance, if we learn about that and how invested that Jim Irsay was with donations, with charities, and being involved in the team. And so let's see what the daughter does from here, because I got to tell you, I don't know if you saw the news, but AR, he's been hurting with a shoulder injury, man. And this is a prove-it year for him. You got to get him working, but it seems like there's a setback. So with her now being in full control with the team, do we expect a new leaf to be turned in Indianapolis? Because here's the thing.
Yep.
I'm watching the Indiana Fever with what they've got with Caitlin Clark, and then I'm watching the Pacers in the final. If you're the Colts, you got to get something going up from here. So maybe this might be a new change here for the Colts for the future.
And the Colts used to be one of the most prominent figures and, franchises in the NFL. People were scared of them. People looked at them as, you don't mess with the Colts. Now,
I think when Peyton Manning, when he got drafted and he built what the Colts were meant to be, I think that really set a tone, right? Because once, obviously the neck injury, it was what it was, but then you go and get the prominent star out of Stanford, Andrew Luck, and it felt like, it don't matter. We got the next big thing at quarterback, but you respect, of course, the old, because remember, I don't even think that they were really that same team right after the Johnny Unitas years in Baltimore. So once Peyton Manning came in, it really set the tone of what the Colts were meant to be. That's where you got Tony Dungy in the building. That's where you ended up getting Caldwell, the head coach there in the building. And then in comes Andrew Luck, the prominent factor from Stanford. And then, it's unfortunate with the retirement thing, but they're hoping that they could at least change up what the culture right now looks like for them. I mean, I love some of their players, but it's like you can't get consistency out of Indianapolis for that.
From what I've heard from Derek is that Carly wanted to fire Chris Ballard last year, but Jim had stepped in and overrode her just because, she has, like I said, been around the team a lot longer than the other two daughters have. And she has seen that, they need to change of pace. But now, this might be the season where if things don't work out, you could see the GM and the coach go, and Carly and the other two daughters making the decisions now. We'll have to wait and see what goes on. In other news, a lot of these murals of Roberto Clemente and Jackie Robinson are getting vandalized, and police are now opening investigations to the people that are vandalizing the murals and statues of Jackie Robinson and Roberto Clemente.
How on earth? I don't get it. I mean, how on earth and why on earth would this be the reason? I thought we were past this. Because again, these symbolize how rich in history Major League Baseball is. I mean, we talked about it in the past with the whole Pittsburgh situation. Because to me, I went off with the whole thing. And then at the same time, you look at Pittsburgh and with the type of organization that they are, where they're cheap, they don't seem to keep a lot of their players. And then already you had these Paul Skeens rumors while he's in his second year in the pros. So it's like, Pittsburgh is obviously going through a rut, but they got to get right. I mean, by the way, I just heard the news about, the White Sox where they're turning the ownership to Ishbia. So
yep.
This is going to be interesting for the Chicago White Sox themselves, but it's just like, I get it, Pittsburgh, but come on. To vandalize a piece of rich history like that, grow up. I thought we were over this, and I thought this is what symbolized why baseball is just so tender in all of our hearts.
Yeah, I mean, it is frustrating to see because Jackie Robinson is such a prominent figure in baseball itself, because without him, you would not have a lot of the prominent players that you have today. And Roberto Clemente being the first Mexican-American baseball player to play in the MLB, it really shows a lot. And getting rid of the history of the MLB because of, racism and other stuff, it's crazy, because that's the whole reason the Indians were named the Indians, is because they had a Native American baseball player.
And if that's the
franchise,
and if that was the case, why is it that the minor league team still has Indians in Indianapolis? Has anybody ever thought about that? And they ain't going to touch the Braves. I already told you. In the state of Georgia, you don't want to mess around with that.
Yeah, no, that's the thing that I'm talking about, is you're messing with a lot of the history that goes with sports, because a lot of these players, the reason why these players were so prominent, or these teams got their names, is because of players that played for their organizations.
Well, and these are pioneers because they served a very pivotal piece of our history. Because if you think about it, it was mostly predominantly white at the time. And so when it came to that transition, nobody was prepared for that. And so if it wasn't for Jackie Robinson giving us new perspectives of, okay, we're not just judging the player as their person. We want to analyze them by their skill set. And that's initially where it paved, the bridge this way. Because think about it, the pioneers, Jackie Robinson, Willie O'Ree, in hockey, and then you look at, a lot of the NBA history. Even, good Lord, look at the international boom in the NBA, and all we remembered was just Tony Kukoc and Vlade Divac and a lot of them. Now you got Jokic, and I got Giannis. I mean, come on. It's history for a reason, folks. Come on. If you don't know it and you never had it up in school, you better go ahead and look up some history yourself. I mean, that's why Google and YouTube are all there.
Yeah, I mean, they want to eradicate the history, or like the history from the past, like the Trinketeers and a whole bunch of other stuff from the history books in schools. It's an interesting article about that. Just look it up, and you'll see the massive changes that
Trust me, you know with me off the air how conservatively minded I am, because I think it's important. It's important for everyone.
It is until it's not. I'll just leave it at that. It is until it's not. And at this point, it's not. But moving on to a big article I read the other day about how Roger Goodell might punish not only the Cleveland Browns, but several other teams that we may cause another NFL lockout by 2030. Because when the collective bargaining agreement comes to fruition in 2030 and it expires and you got to renegotiate the new one, J.C. Tretter, former center for the Cleveland Browns and Atlanta Falcons, is the president of these Players Association. And Roger Goodell said that he might make an example out of Cleveland, saying punishing them for spending all of that money that they did on Deshaun Watson, and any other future teams that want to do that. And also, on the player side of things, the collective bargaining agreement in the NFL Players Association has been, kind of going back and forth with Roger Goodell, saying like, no, we don't want you to mess with any of the teams, including the Browns, because this will ruin their chances of getting pay for them and their future families. And right now, there's a big rift that's being torn between Roger Goodell and the players. There might be a chance for an NFL lockout in 2030 if it's resolved.
I think here's the problem, and I think with Cleveland being at, the arc of this, is it's not the organization's fault. It's the owner. That's really all it is. Because Jimmy Haslam, again, he's always had his hand on the pies when it comes to stuff like this. Because why would Shedeur Sanders be drafted in the first place? Because look at the merchandise, the NIL. That's exactly what Jimmy Haslam is. Jimmy Haslam tends to be like the guy that sees business. He sees gold when it's strike high. And so that's why the merchandise sales get made up for it. But at the same time, I'm not going to punish an organization and the players because of, obviously, the situation that was, first of all, dealt with the owner. Because once you got the Deshaun Watson situation with how heated it was up in Houston, you knew what you signed up for. And that's why you're looking at Baker Mayfield with the success that he's having right now in Tampa. And it's already making you look like, man, why did we even give up on this project in the first place if we just left it alone? I know part of it is coaching language, all the rest of the other stuff. It just didn't mesh well. But at the same time, you knew the potential that you had, and you knew the business that you were getting into once you first. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I never signed up for that. Read the fine prints of the contracts. Okay, that's in any business. If you don't understand the fine prints of the contract, that's where 9 out of 10 times you get screwed over upon that. Trust me, a lot of people that have shocked faces, I'm not surprised. You didn't end up reading the fine prints of the contract, and neither did you truthfully pay attention to the business you were getting into. So I'm not going to me, if this was a situation on this, I'm not going to punish the organization, but I will make an example out of Jimmy Haslam for this kind of thing. Because, again, I felt like the Browns were on the right step in the right direction. Because, man, when Baker Mayfield got the first win for the Cleveland Browns, how much on cloud nine were we that we were like, oh, this is a new leaf that's turning. Myles Garrett's legit. Baker Mayfield, he's a rebel, but you know what? You got him a win, and he's giving him attitude, and man, we're about to see a new Cleveland Brown. Stuff like that.
I mean, to me, I don't think that you should punish anybody, not even the owner. And to me, it's not my Cleveland Browns fandom coming into play here. It's more or less we were Jimmy Haslam was one of the people that was not afraid to do something that other NFL owners are afraid to do, and give out a fully guaranteed contract. Because here's the thing, Jimmy Haslam is a part of an organization that has never had a franchise quarterback ever since the time that he's been an owner. And I guarantee you that teams like the Jets or You know, the Bears.
I mean, your last recent franchise quarterback was Bernie Kosar.
Yeah,
and that's why I'm like,
to go after a guy who was a top 5 NFL quarterback when he was playing, to give him that money to like take your franchise in the next direction, you can't fault Jimmy Haslam for that. You can't, because he's trying to take a shot to better your franchise, to get you to the winning side of things. Because let's face it, we all knew Baker was good, but at that point in time when that was happening, we saw how good Deshaun Watson was. We thought this could be the next step that could take us in the right direction. And you can't fault Jimmy Haslam for just taking the shot.
I will say this to rebuttal to it, because we did see Baker Mayfield before OBJ came in here. Because remember, the Giants thought that they were shipping off OBJ into a foreign island just to be stranded. That's what they thought. But if you looked at the numbers of Baker Mayfield strictly with Jarvis Landry, he was productive. Why would he have needed OBJ in the first place? I understand overloading offense and all the rest of it, but it seemed like the chemistry was just fine. Jarvis Landry was producing well, especially with the whole debacle in Miami before he went up to Cleveland. And it seemed like he was the star. He was the guy that was getting the targets, and he was getting the catches. And Jarvis was productive. And then you look at, the David Njoku's, and then you look at the Nick Chubbs. I just felt like it was just too much pressure. That's just me with my perspective on the whole thing. I think if you didn't get OBJ, I felt like the Cleveland Browns would have just been relevant. I think they would be a playoff team, because there was no need for that. But I think a lot of that is because the Giants were trying to make an example of OBJ, go and ship him off to an island, and then there you go.
Yeah, who knows what it is, but I don't think that they should have punished anybody or should punish anybody in the future.
But I will say this, as far as a business move when it comes to Jimmy Haslam, among all other owners, okay, you don't make a fully guaranteed money unless you know exactly the business you get into. Because remember, I feel like with Deshaun Watson, now the question I have is, with Deshaun's build, was that all Bill O'Brien? We never talk about that.
Well, now we got to answer
Bill O'Brien's a very good offensive coach. So that's the part that I'm a little questionable about.
Well, now we got to answer the question of, like, we're going to play the what if game. Because, like, what if Shedeur pans out and becomes a, guy that takes Cleveland to the playoffs this year? Well, now next year, he takes us to the playoffs and wins the playoff game, and then finishes 3rd or 4th in the league in MVP voting. And then by the 3rd season that he's there, his contract year, he takes Cleveland to the AFC Championship game, and then also finishes 2nd in MVP voting.
But that's where...
Is this the time that it would be almost verified worth giving a fully guaranteed contract to somebody?
No, so at that point, yes. Because here's the thing. He is now a homegrown build, not somebody that's already been up and in the league and now he's just moving this way. Because again, you are now, I have to see the details of the Aaron Rodgers contract, because remember, he did end up saying in an interview that he would have been okay being a backup in Green Bay if they made a call. But Green Bay was not going to do that, because first of all, you already dealt with the Aaron Rodgers thing, and you saw how he was with Jordan Love up at the time. So if you're saying you're comfortable with being a backup quarterback, you're going to be a backup quarterback, okay? That's just what it is. But again, and I look at this from, the Brock Purdy situation with that fully guaranteed. Again, I'm not saying San Francisco did a terrible business, but let's be honest here. Sometimes this is why it's always important for a few key reasons. Work ethic, film study, and then, of course, you're breaking down the quarterback as a whole. Because ultimately, you want to trust with what your eyes and what your mind says, but sometimes you also got to go with your gut. Because, again, if Shedeur Sanders does everything like you explained, he's my franchise quarterback. Leave that thing alone. Because at that point, I'm looking at Jimmy and I'm like, remember Baker, remember? We're not going to make the same mistake twice. Because the minute that you do that, now you got to start this whole thing all over again. So that's why I'm like, leave that thing alone. Give it the contract because now you've seen with how proven Shedeur Sanders is. So at that point, do you want to be a team being relevant for the next 5 years, or do you want to go back to being in the same hole for 10? You know what I mean? It's things like that you have to put into consideration. That's why business is never a fun. It's never a fun thing to deal with. It never is.
It's not. It's really not. And like I just saw this that came across my phone not long ago. It said Derek Carr retired, but when he retired, he gave the Saints $30 million back because he did not want to sit on the couch and take the Saints' money. So the Saints have $30 million back on their cap that they could use.
Now, guess what, Saints? Now keep going and making moves. Get rid of that dead cap. Seriously, keep making moves. Because you know what? If it was like, you know, what's funny is I think it's more dear-hearted to Derek Carr because we know he's a very religious person. Okay, I mean, I've heard stories of him with his kids, you know, in the school. They are well-mannered, they are well-disciplined, and Derek Carr, he's a loving father. He's also a very great friend. So, I mean, you should never take that for granted right there. If he's giving you 30, don't take that moment for granted. Go and keep making moves. Because at that point, you don't even know what you're going to get with Tyler Shuck. Neither do you even know what you're
going to get. $30 million and go sign another offensive weapon.
Yes, and then at the same time, get rid
Keenan Allen's available. Go get Keenan Allen.
Yeah, get some veteran experience up and in the room. But at the same time, you got to get rid of these old existing contracts because this is not doing anybody any justice whatsoever. That's what we've been harping about with New Orleans for the last couple days. So, yeah. Again, I'm not taking that moment for granted at all. I'm taking that, and I'm going to make some moves with that because that's doing me a solid.
Maybe go get a decent quarterback that could be, you know, a free agent still.
What if Tyler Shuck just shocks the world? But I don't know.
Honestly, what if Kellen Moore shocks the world and makes the Saints into a playoff team?
Good. These are all the hypotheticals we will never know about unless we actually.
What if Lamar Jackson gets hurt week 4 in the NFL?
What if the San Francisco 49ers look at that easy schedule and now it's not so easy come, Thanksgiving?
I mean, what if Shedeur Sanders is the first rookie to win an MVP?
So many hypotheticals. All these.
What if the Chargers win a Super Bowl?
See, now we're getting carried away, Chase.
This is the hot press.
There's something else, man. But again, it's a lot of hypothetical talk.
First Super Bowl in franchise history for them, it would be.
So here's one that's not so if, and that's of course what's happening tonight, which is the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. I was talking about
KC. Woo, 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 woo.
I was talking about this, and look, I am a fan of both because they never won a championship in their franchise history. Now we know Oklahoma City. They've only been in the league they're still fresh in this, but we know they built a culture in Oklahoma. Okay.
And they were the Supersonics, right?
They were the Supersonics before they relocated from here. So it wasn't only just about a college town watching Oklahoma football or Oklahoma softball. Okay. Now you've got Oklahoma City, and they're stamping the flag now of them being that team that does the work, and they bring home a championship. And what's funny about this is because, you look at both these franchises' histories. Going back from the Seattle Supersonics, I mean, we remember Gary Payton, we remember Shawn Kemp, and we remember a lot of really good players. And then the last one who was drafted by them, Kevin Durant. Then they moved to OKC. They get James Harden. They get Russell Westbrook. They get a lot. All the rest is history.
Kevin Durant?
Yeah, Kevin Durant is the last Supersonic.
Wow.
Crazy, isn't it? But the thing is that Oklahoma City, what I thought was incredible is that they were not a great team off the bat, but they were building something interesting. I mean, you get a young Russell Westbrook from UCLA, you get, a James Harden from Arizona State. So it was like you were building for something really interesting. And now, here's the thing. I am not going to bash on the Clippers getting rid of SGA. Because here's the thing. Kawhi Leonard made that clear that he wanted Paul George at the middle of that. So, of course, you were going to have to give up a young star, and that was SGA. Okay, once he was there up in the Clippers, you were going to go through the rotation between him and Lou Williams and Kawhi and then Paul George. It was just going to be very, very cluttered. So at least OKC, when they were already moving on from Kevin Durant and Serge Ibaka and Russell Westbrook, they needed something new. And now you look at SGA, and they've built a lot of this organic, homegrown stuff with now you got Chet Holmgren, you got Hartenstein, and you bring in a pivotal piece like Alex Caruso. I think the Thunder, people don't think that this is a fantastic team, but I'll tell you what, though, number 1 seed and a team that really controls their destiny, whether they're attacking the paint or they're attacking the three-point line, however, or they're defending. It is a young team, and what we're witnessing right now, like I said in the last episode, is this is Adam Silver's vision. Okay, there's no longer going to be super teams. There are going to be superstars in every organization now. And you're not going to see back-to-back champions like if you're watching the Lakers or the Celtics or you're watching the Golden State Warriors. You're not going to see a whole lot of that now.
Or the Bulls.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, now you're going to see teams like small market teams like these two tonight. And they're going to show you what they're all about. Now, on Indiana's side, I'll tell you this. I mean, we watched Reggie Miller, Jalen Rose, Jermaine O'Neal. Now you got Tyrese Halliburton. I'm not going to say Halliburton is a superstar, but he is a star in the up-and-comings to be one. And I'll tell you what I think is remarkable about Indiana is that they all mesh by the speed of Tyrese Halliburton. They just follow. And that's why when he's on it and he gives you the points and he gives you the speed, he gives you the stops and the passes, everybody follows him. That's why I think the Pacers, they're an interesting team. But once you watch, you got another one, Pascal Siakam. He's been to the big dance. He's won it for Toronto. Now he comes into Indiana, and he's a big piece of that. And you still got Miles Turner. So people that think that this is going to be a boring finals, because why? You're not getting the Lakers. You're not getting the Celtics. You're not getting Golden State. Who cares? You're getting two small market teams that are going to show you that this is what Adam Silver's vision was about all this
I would
time.
love to see that in like the MLB, a small market team, like two small market teams like the Rockies and the Guardians playing it out in the World Series.
Or you
How
got
awesome would that
Or
be?
you got the Pirates. I mean, think about it this way. Technically, you had two teams. Now, again, I know that there was an asterisk in the middle of it, but you watched the Astros and the Nationals go at it, and Washington prevailed in 2019. Because that was another team that, because they moved on. This was actually the third team that moved, by the way. Third time they relocated, because you think about the Montreal Expos, and beforehand, you had the Baltimore Orioles, and then all of a sudden it just changed up. And now,
where did Baltimore go?
Baltimore, I think that was the team that they initially ended up moving to be Montreal, and then they brought that back. It's that's what
I thought. I was just
crazy story. Crazy story. You got to look it up. But that was.
They still have the stadium in Montreal. Just make another Expos team.
But that's what I'm saying. So, but the thing is that there's no parity up in Major League Baseball either. Why? Because, again, I'm not saying put a salary cap on this thing, because that does you no justice. But what I do say is that these owners need to understand what the game of baseball is all about, i.e. the Pirates, i.e. the A's, i.e. the Rockies for once. They need to understand what the game of baseball all comes down to. But the thing of it is that you got the Dodgers, you got the Cubs, you got the Yankees, you got the Mets, you got a lot of these big market teams.
The Red Sox.
The Red Sox, the Braves. I mean, they're all spending up a lot of this money. But what's happening to a lot of these smaller market teams that are not tapping into, I mean, I was talking about this. I'll say this on a side note. I was going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals with the Shamar Stewart situation. It's telling you how cheap that Cincinnati is. And they just paid 3 of their important offensive players. They have shareholders.
I'm laughing at your dog right now. I just knocked the pillow off the.
She's had enough. And so have I. We've had enough of this mediocrity with like all of this and all these excuses.
Your dog's sick of the losing. It wants to win.
Yeah. See, she can feel the energy from me. So that. But it's going to be exciting tonight. And honestly, I don't care, who wins. I think it's just exciting that the fact that we get two of these small market teams. I mean, OKC's back in it since 2013. They didn't get it done against the Heat, and first time back in a long time for Indiana. So now this is Adam Silver's vision this whole time. This is what he's been harping about with parity in the NBA.
And wasn't OKC the most recent expansion team?
They were, and they were the most recent expanded, relocated team. Yep. And because again, you had the Charlotte Bobcats, which there was a Charlotte Hornets years ago, but then they moved them to New Orleans. They became the New Orleans Hornets because now then they became the Pelicans. And then you brought back the Hornets now, back in Charlotte, like you shouldn't. So
yeah, I was going to say the Bobcats don't exist no more. So
not anymore now that you got the Hornets back up in Charlotte. And you know what? It's more fitting. Okay, Muggsy Bogues.
I don't know. I like the Bobcats better, to be honest.
I mean, hey, the unis were kind of nice, right?
Yeah, they were.
Between that and the Atlanta Thrashers.
Dude, I honestly like the Supersonics old uniforms too.
So do I. And you know what? Can the mayor stop pulling jokes? That was messed up. He pulled out a basketball and he's like, nah, I wish. Come on, man. Why are you pulling jokes this early in Seattle? I mean, hell. I mean, now we got a name in Utah. Utah Mammoth.
I mean, Seattle's got every pro sports organization except for basketball.
Yeah, which I felt like basketball in Seattle, it would have been successful. I mean, think about how they were when they first got the Seahawks. You got football in the Pacific Northwest. You know, it was interesting. And then that's when Steve Largent came around and Krieg and then now you got a Super Bowl with the Legion of Boom. So
yeah, and the Mariners, like, they're no scrubs.
The Mariners are the only team. Oh, I mean, the Mariners will never be like the 2001 Mariners. That was a great team, but still, it's like it's such a sad laughing stock because it's like this team could be so much better, and I'm not buying into the Mariners unless I actually see.
And then you got the Kraken.
Yeah, and look, the Seattle Kraken. I mean, it was not. They were not going to pull off with what the Vegas Golden Knights did. Not at all. I mean, a new expanded team, they kind of were what I expected them to be. They were trying something new. Now, second year, however, they were that close to being in the Western Conference Final. And then you would have had two newly expanded teams as your Western Conference Final.
Yeah.
That would have been
watch the Utah Mammoth be in there next year.
You know what? They got good. They have a possibility because you know what? I love the Utah owners. The way that they're taking care of the Jazz and the way that they're taking care of the Mammoth.
Wait, the owner of the Jazz owns the Mammoths now?
That's right. That's right. They're the same ones. And you know what? They're a young, high-tech company that has a similar mindset like Arthur Blank. They're conservative. Their prices on concessions are reasonable. Like water bottles are $1, and then you got hot dogs for $1.50, and you got beer for like $2.
I did not know that. I did not know that the owners of the Utah Mammoths were the same as the Jazz.
This was why I was so happy. They're in good hands because in Arizona, I feel for a lot of Coyote fans, but Alex Morello was not the right owner. He was one that tried to make it, he tried to propose a stadium in Scottsdale, and the Scottsdale mayor said no because they felt like it would have tapped into their water system, and then they would have done. They just didn't want to do business with that owner. That's it. If you got a new owner in Arizona, you would have never had to deal with this situation, and you would have never had to go through being a team playing in a collegiate ice with Arizona State. What the hell you doing? Like, it made no sense.
A hockey team in Arizona. That's pretty interesting.
That was originally when it became hockey in the desert, and now I feel like the Vegas Golden Knights are the hockey in the desert. Come on.
I mean, the other franchises need to keep up. I mean,
would like to see
the NHL is expanding left and right. MLB, NFL, and NBA need to keep up.
Yeah, because honestly, I would like to see a Coyote come back. I really would. I just would like a better owner that would own the team and would be more competitive and more understanding.
Where were the Coyotes?
Yeah.
Where were they?
They were in Arizona.
Were they?
Yeah. Yeah. They were the Phoenix Coyotes, and then they became the Arizona Coyotes. But the thing is Alex Morello was just not that good of an owner. He wasn't. And I'm not saying he's worse, but he was along the lines of a Dan Snyder. Let's just say that.
Jesus.
Because first of all, the Gila River Arena was a nice facility, and yet they couldn't even come up to terms with financial reasons, and then that's where they ended up. They didn't want to renew the lease, so it's still there, and then they had to go and move on with the local college at Arizona State. Like, are you serious?
Well, I'm telling you one thing now. If I ever became a billionaire, I'm creating a Utah Vipers team for NFL in Utah, and my GM is going to be Jake Silva.
See, because I can make some deals, man. You give me the money, I'm going to build you the roster. I'm going to build a winning team. Look at that. I mean,
Utah Vipers, the colors will be purple and green.
And you know what? You can change the helmets at any time. I don't care.
The helmets will be a snake going up over the top with the mouth open all the way down at the bottom.
You could almost pull off like a similarity kind of look with like the top strip, just like the Arizona Rattlers. That, good Lord, I actually love those. Those were low key really nice.
That's my pitch for an NFL expansion team, the Utah Vipers.
Oh, there you go. You know what though? I mean, I think if I had to think of like a location at least, I mean,
Salt Lake City.
Yeah, Salt Lake City. Beautiful town, and the weather is just about as similar as Colorado. Better. So, yeah, I like the idea.
And I feel like there will be a ton of fans for football there.
There would. And well, but here's the other thing, too, because you also got a consideration sports betting. That's the other thing. And, I mean, you get all these sports books and casinos, but that's usually what always comes up into play. Got to find a way to keep the lights on. But
absolutely,
yeah, I'll say as my last few minutes and my last note about this is that, you know, going back to Cincinnati, because I think the Bengals, they're on a mission, and Joe Burrow, like, he clearly wants to get this team in the playoffs. He is invested. But the problem of it is that, again, you are with what your ownership is. And if your ownership remains cheap, because here's the thing, the Shamar Stewart situation with the contract is just comical because it's showing more and more what your true colors really are. And the funny thing of it is the Baltimore Ravens, Marlon Humphrey literally took a shot at Cincinnati because
wow,
Mike Green, or it was either Mike Green or it was the draft pick beforehand that signed the rookie deal. It said, hey, our rookie signed his deal. What's going on, Cincinnati? Why are you not signing yours? They're taking shots. And that's your old school division rival just being division rival. You know, but at the same time, you are showing your true colors. You've got Trey Hendrickson, who's not happy, who wants a new contract. And what are you doing about that situation? And you already paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So it's not like you do not have the money. I told you this, Chase. There are shareholders there for a reason. Because the minute you do not have the money personally, this is where you tap into the shareholders' money. And you know what? You're going to pay that back anyway, because that's what it is about dealing with a credit card. You will have debt, but you got to pay that debt off. Right? But I just think that whole Shamar Stewart situation is it's just showing more and more of the true colors, man. I don't get it. I don't get it.
I don't either.
You're going to make this right because Joe Burrow is just telling you, like, he is feeding every piece to you that, like, I'm elite if you don't make this right. So
he's like, I'm going to go to Cleveland because they know how to spend the money and get the people there. So I'm going to go to Cleveland and I'm going to win.
Maybe I might go to Detroit.
Defense.
Yeah, maybe I might go to Detroit. How about that?
No, watch him go to Cleveland just to spite Cincinnati and win a Super Bowl with Cleveland.
Yeah, that'll be a day that neither Pittsburgh or Cincinnati fans will live. Like, they will not live that day.
I shit you not, Cincinnati fans would be so pissed off.
Oh, of course.
Because knowing that all they had to do was just pay for these players and it would have been fine.
That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. It's just, you're not going to make everybody happy, but at the very least, do your due diligence as you are in ownership.
Gosh.
I mean,
Joe Burrow with that Cleveland Browns defense, bro, that would be insane.
Oh, then I would not even – you won't even hear a peep from me for 5 years with Cleveland. Just won't, because that would have already proved to you there's your franchise quarterback, and maybe there's a build relevancy. But if a scenario happens, and you've seen this more than once, like if that scenario happened again, dude, something is spiked in the water in Cleveland. I don't know, but that is, yeah. They have been trying to turn a new leaf for years.
I'm telling you, it's the curse of the lake. Dude, that's why I'm excited that they finally broke ground at the Brook Park site, because I kept telling people, I'm like, get them away from the being on the lake. And they're like, why? I'm like, did you not know how bad the Guardians were when they were on the lake? They were the worst team in baseball for years.
So bad.
Then they moved like just down the road, like probably 10, 15 miles. And the very next year they go to the World Series. Like, come on. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. No, I think being on that lakefront is cursed.
Nothing ever is. Nothing. Look, I don't believe in coincidences. I just think that this stuff it literally is it's a trend. It's a trend.
I think it's truly a curse being on that lake and playing on that lakefront. Get the hell away from that lake.
Maybe we should have it as our next horror documentary then. Get away from the lake in Cleveland.
Listen, I shit you not. That's why I predicted Cleveland, like the Browns, to win the Super Bowl in 2030, because they're going to Brook Park in 2029. I guarantee you 1 year after going to Brook Park, they make it. Mark my words. If that actually happens, that curse of the lake is real. Do never build another sports franchise on that lake.
Things are bound to change. All righty, man. Well, we're wrapping it up here tonight. First and foremost, shout out to Wendell Davis Jr. Really, really good interview from there. Really great insight. We should be having at least a couple more up and on the way. I think next week we might have some people that represent for the Montreal Canadiens coming on by and talking a little bit of some Canadiens hockey, figuring out what could be going on there, what seems to be brewing up with Martin St. Louis, because he seems to be trending this team in the right direction. And the whole state of Canada is all on Edmonton's side. So we'll see what happens with the remainder up and on this series, but it's an exciting one. But for Chase and myself, we'll see you guys tomorrow night on another edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, everyone. Happy Thursday, and we'll see you guys on Friday here on the show. Take care, everyone.